Who was the weakest link in the band Fleetwood Mac? Let's talk about it. Of course, in any great band, there's not actually a weak link, but that's what makes this game interesting. So for the purposes of this game, we always try to pick the weakest link in a given band, even though in actuality the band is great as the sum of its parts. And that's certainly the case with Fleetwood Mac. Another thing to point out in terms of Fleetwood Mac is there are many different incarnations of the band. The band's had many different members over the years, and so for the purposes of this particular video, we're just going to be talking about the classic lineup of Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, Christine McVie, John McVie, and Mick Fleetwood. And this isn't the original lineup, it isn't the current lineup, it is the Rumors lineup, which is arguably the pivotal album in their discography. And that's another way I'm going to deal with this kind of complicated band history and complicated changing personnel of the band, is basically just by concentrating on Rumors as my example in the discography. I may dip here, I may dip there, but if I seem to be concentrating on Rumors a lot in this particular video, it's because I'm trying to simplify the discussion. Now, with that said, I'm going to start going down band member by band member to make a case about the weakest link. So, starting off with the namesake of the band, which is Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, we're dealing with the rhythm section. And with Fleetwood Mac, the rhythm section is the signature aspect of the band. In every incarnation of Fleetwood Mac, it's the rhythm section that gives the band its signature foundation. And part of the rhythm section's approach is to play soft and melodically, but with the precision of like a hard rock band. For the most part, it's an R&B inspired approach toward the rhythm section, and McVie and Mick Fleetwood stay very locked in, and it's hard to talk about one without the other. So let's try real quick. So with Mick Fleetwood in particular, he has a very soft right foot. His bass drum is one of the quietest bass drums in classic rock. But at the same time, it's the defining beat. It's the heartbeat of Fleetwood Mac. So just pulling that off is rather interesting. And it has to do a little bit with drawing from influences outside of rock and roll, going toward jazz and maybe even country music. And I feel that it's this bass drum softness where Mick Fleetwood's sound really begins, and from there he goes on to augment it primarily with his snare, which is a little bit brisker, and his hi-hat. And he is one of the more clever beat makers in pop music, pop rock music. Alright, let's move over to John McVie. John McVie is in the Paul McCartney school of bass playing, in that he's looking for melody rather than thumping out like a slap bass. And if you go down through the songs on Rumors, if you take something like Dreams, which was one of the big hit singles, it's really a 2-chord song on the guitar, but the bass is doing so much to move the song along. If you go to a song like The Chain, it has a signature melodic bass line. If you go to a song like You Make Lovin' Fun, it has a really great driving upbeat bass line that gives the song much more dimension and depth than it would have purely as like a boogie woogie keyboard song. So the bass is almost a lead instrument in Fleetwood Mac. Alright, let's move on to Christine McVie. Christine McVie, in addition to being one of the lead vocalists in the band and one of the primary background vocalists in the band, is also a keyboard player. And the keyboards occupy a very special position in Fleetwood Mac in that they're almost more riffy than the guitar. Lindsey Buckingham has a tendency to go off into the stratosphere and to play unusual chord progressions and lead lines, and he plays with his fingers rather than a pick, and he just has kind of a spacey sound. Now, interestingly enough, I do believe that Christine McVie and Lindsey Buckingham have this interesting correspondence in the band. They really play off of one another melodically. But Christine McVie has a real R&B-ish approach to her keyboard playing, and it's a real clean keyboard sound. It's usually either piano-driven or organ-driven. There's not a lot of crazy synthesizer sounds, but she can augment her sound with some cool keyboard effects when necessary. But what else is important about her is her songwriting. So if you take a look at Rumors, Christine McVie wrote Songbird, You Make Loving Fun, and she wrote Oh Daddy, but she also co-wrote The Chain, and she wrote Don't Stop. So there are a good almost third of the album couldn't exist without her songwriting. All right, let's move to Stevie Nicks. Stevie Nicks doesn't play an instrument, and she was not an original member of Fleetwood Mac, and she is American, while Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, and Christine McVie are British, and yet somehow she fit into this band so perfectly, like a hand in glove. And going back to the Rumors tracks, she wrote Dreams, which was the biggest song on the album. She wrote I Don't Want to Know, and she wrote Gold Dust Woman, which is another huge song on the album. And these are not just big songs, they're defining songs for the band. And as I say, she has at times a simplistic approach to her songwriting, but that turns out to be perfect for a 5-piece band like Fleetwood Mac, because it allows the other members to pitch in and contribute. Now, moving on to Lindsey Buckingham. Lindsey Buckingham is an excellent guitarist. He's an incredible technician. He has his own hand-built guitar, and he has his own individual way of picking and playing that's different from anybody else in the business. He's not exactly a Travis picker even. He has his own thing, and he's extremely fast, and he's extremely unusual in his chord phrasings and his lead lines. He has an unusual sense of melody, and he has an unusual sense of rhythm, and he has a penchant for going off in areas that are veering on comical or novelty. So if you listen to Secondhand News, in both the guitar and his voice, you can get this zaniness that's very important to Lindsey Buckingham. So that's a little rundown on each one of the members and briefly what they bring to the table. And when I say briefly, I do mean briefly. They each bring much, much more than that. But if we were to imagine the band without the members, say one by one we take them away. If we take away Mick Fleetwood, could we still do Rumors? It seems unlikely because, like what I said, Mick Fleetwood and John McVie are the heartbeat of the band. They are what gives it its basic foundation, and if you change Mick Fleetwood, you're going to lose that soft right foot. You're going to lose that real brisk, interesting choice of pop beats, and you're going to lose that, subtle African rhythm that he puts into everything. Moving on to John McVie. It's the same story. You can't replace him because he is the essential foundation of the band, and his sense of melody drives the band even more than the vocal lines, even more sometimes than the song structure itself. It's what he brings to the counter melody that makes the song pop. So I think Mick Fleetwood and John McVie are rightly the namesake of the band and have been the constant center of the band from the beginning all the way to now, and deservedly so. Neither one of them can be called the weakest link. Moving on to Christine McVie. With the contribution that she makes to songwriting, plus her ability to sing lead vocals, plus her ability to provide the keyboard element for the band, she's also an indispensable member. You could not replace her. You cannot find another person to come in and do what she does. There's not another female vocalist that has her chops as songwriter. There's not another keyboard player that can do what she does vocally. So Christine McVie cannot be considered the weakest link. As far as Stevie Nicks goes, she is not only one of the most important songwriters in the band and a co-lead vocalist of the band, she is the drawing charisma point for the band. She's almost the face of the band. Back when Rumors was hitting the charts, she was the perceived to be the face of the band because of the success of her song Dreams. And if you look at the cover of Rumors, it's her and Mick Fleetwood. They recognize the star quality that she has just in looks, just as a charismatic performer. So while I do believe that you could have the band without Stevie Nicks, I still don't think that she's the weakest link. That leaves only one person, Lindsey Buckingham. Now, I love Lindsey Buckingham as a guitar player, and I think that he is highly important in Fleetwood Mac, and that his songs are extremely important in the band's discography, but I think they could get by without him. I think that this was shown in the time that he left the band, and they continued on without him to make another album, although they did take 2 people to replace him. Let's give him his props. They weren't able to get through without Lindsey Buckingham just by finding one person. They needed 2. And if you go back and listen to the album that they made without him, which was called, I believe, Behind the Mask, you still have a Fleetwood Mac sound. And yes, you're missing Lindsey Buckingham. You probably need him to fully attain what they had on Rumors, but at the same time, Rumors probably represents the band's peak anyway. So I think that Fleetwood Mac had gone through a succession of guitarists, and Lindsey Buckingham is only one in a series if you look at it that way. And that's basically a reluctant thing to say because I like Lindsey Buckingham so much, and I think he's a great vocalist and a great guitar player, but I think if push comes to shove, he's the one person of the Rumors era of Fleetwood Mac that I think could have been replaced. So that's my thoughts, but what really counts is what you think. So feel free to comment in the section below. Remember to like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.